Willkommen, welcome, bienvenue. La radio du festival Bildrausch.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Cette semaine, à l'occasion de la 11e édition du festival Bildrausch à Bâle, nous inaugurons une série d'entretiens et de discussions réalisés dans les conditions du direct, en présence des cinéastes et des interprètes que nous avons souhaité avoir à nos côtés pour nous parler des films qu'ils défendent au sein d'une programmation traditionnellement riche et audacieuse et qui réserve encore cette année, nous le verrons, son lot de belles trouvailles. Pour aborder ces films et entamer le dialogue avec nos invités, j'ai la chance d'être accompagné par les signatures habituelles et incontournables de Filmexplorer, Giuseppe di Salvatore, Ruth Baettig, Jean Perret et Émilien Gour, qui se succéderont à ce micro pour interviewer les différentes personnes. Et je n'oublie pas que cette émission ne serait pas sans la réalisation de notre metteur en son émérite, Olivier Legras. Merci à lui. Je salue également notre premier invité, le cinéaste David Easteal, qui nous vient de Melbourne, en Australie. Hello David.
Hello.
Votre premier long métrage intitulé The Plains, en compétition dans le programme international, est un objet hybride, à mi-chemin entre la fiction et le documentaire, le huis clos et le road movie. Surtout, le film étonne par un dispositif de mise en scène radical que l'on a pu voir adopté précédemment par des réalisateurs tels qu'Abbas Kiarostami ou Jafar Panahi, pour les plus illustres, et qui consiste à faire de l'habitacle d'une automobile le théâtre presque exclusif d'une œuvre cinématographique. Ici, en l'occurrence, il s'agit de la voiture d'Andrew, un homme blanc de plus de 50 ans, selon une expression de plus en plus usitée ces derniers temps, et qui, chaque fin d'après-midi de la semaine, répète un long trajet embouteillé en périphérie de Melbourne, le conduisant de son lieu de travail vers son domicile. Trajet routinier, mais néanmoins ponctué de petits rituels, tels que téléphoner à sa mère atteinte de démence. Trajet dont la solitude se voit ponctuellement brisée par la présence de David, un jeune confrère avec qui Andrew s'est proposé de partager la route. Le covoitureur étant incarné à l'écran par le cinéaste lui-même. D'où cette première question que je me permets de vous poser, David Easteal, avant de laisser par la suite les rênes de l'entretien à mes collègues Giuseppe et Ruth. Qui est Andrew et comment sa voiture en est-elle arrivée à vous inspirer à long métrage de cinéma? So first question, David, who is Andrew and how did you get the idea to shoot a feature film in his car?
Andrew is a man who is in his late 50s in Melbourne. He works as a solicitor, as a lawyer, and we worked together once. We found out that the film's really based on this relationship that we had. I work as well as doing film as a lawyer, and at that time it was the start of my that career, and it was in the outer suburbs of Melbourne, and coincidentally Andrew and I lived very close to each other, so he started to offer me lifts home, and I got to know Andrew over about 12 months that I lived there, and we developed a friendship in these drives home, and over the course of the year Andrew's mother passed away, and he would call her every day until her passing. I heard these calls. I heard the calls with his wife. So this is the genesis of the idea. I saw the effect that this had on Andrew. This time of his mother's passing, I sensed quite a profound effect on him. And I wanted to make a film that explored this time when, as an adult, your parents pass, and there's this realization, your own mortality. You're next. And I set about trying to write a more traditional script based on a character like this, and I really struggled. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get there. So I conceived of filming the way we did because really that's how I got to know Andrew, through the commutes. It clicked that I could limit the film to these drives. I think cars are very cinematic spaces, and I really enjoy films that are set in cars, and I had in short films worked with cars as a setting, and I thought this was a unique opportunity to set a film in a car and explore these themes, the time passing, by shooting over a year, and so that's really where who Andrew is and where the story came from.
Yeah, David, we're of course very, very struck from the dispositive as such, because it's radical in the sense that you are faithful to this setting. And what I liked the most of this dispositive, of course, there is a sort of reference to cinema itself. We have a screen. There is someone watching the screen, even if it's just the glasses of a car. But I mean, what I liked is the variation that is so minimal that you became very sensitive to all details and all the variation. So was for you a sort of line for script? I don't know if you had some script for this film, or a sort of thread to build your dramaturgy.
Definitely, I think just as a first point, I always seem to be drawn to repetition in art and subtle changes in repetition, in music, in some of the literature that I like. So there was that in the back of my mind, that if we're going to see the year pass, I wanted to be able to see, by having maybe a constant in the film, it would provide an opportunity through this frame within the frame to really see these subtle changes of the time passing in a nice way, I thought. So I had no idea if it would work, if it would come together. It was quite a experimental approach. And as I started editing the film, because we shot very incrementally, I was able to assess as we went along and see how things were going. But initially, the two main lines through the film were to be the death of Andrew's mother and the co-worker entering the film and then departing at the end, just to give some shape to the film. It's not a fly-on-the-wall piece. It's I spent a lot of time trying to think of how, I didn't want to make a work where perhaps it could be projected in a gallery and you could enter it at some stage and depart. And I wanted to make a film that you sat from the start to the end. And so thinking all the time as to how this would work, in the back of my mind, those were the two main threads. Now, of course, when we filmed, lots of time passed between each shot, lots of time to reflect on what might be able to happen in the next month. So each time it was a process of writing what might happen in the next shoot. And then putting that to Andrew, making sure he was comfortable or agreed, and he would have discussions with Cherie, and perhaps I would too, so that when we shot each month, we were both on the same page as to what was going to happen. And we were drawing from things, not just when we worked together years gone by, but more contemporaneous events that were happening. Cherie's mother passed during the year of shooting, and that enters the film. And so the film really evolved, keeping in mind the overall threads, which remain the same. Themes took shape, and it was very interesting to work this way. It was it was kind of exciting in a way to see things form.
What I found very interesting for me, it was the car as a time capsule, because you are going forward and there is just all the time the present is the car, and on the other hand there is something you have to leave behind. And I liked very much this this moving through time, and there is the present is there. So how you thought a little bit about this, but perhaps how you take it when I see it like this as a spectator.
Well, no, thank you. I think those were things I was really hoping to bring out. These themes of time and also memory and the past, I think, is present in the film. But really, I think I'm someone who's, tend to be always acutely aware of the passing of time, and that things pass, and there's an impermanence to everything. That I in the back of my mind, even at the happiest moments of my life, I'm sort of I have this awareness, and I like filming this way. It brings it out not only by visually, but these themes that are in the present in the film presented, I think, that tie into that. You see Andrew say quite explicitly at some stages when his mum's about to pass that, it gets to a stage where you just think they're going to be around forever, with dementia, and it's not like that, of course. So I was thinking about these things in the back of my mind, wanting to explore these themes.
I will say, because the clock is or the car clock is in the center of the image almost all the time, and I would wonder whether the clock weren't there. Probably you would have put it there because
it was very happy coincidence. Yeah. I didn't think to do it, and we just shot on Andrew's car, and that's where the clock is, and it provides an interesting function in the film because it's always there, and because we film takes uninterrupted. I mean, there's a sense of the elasticity of time. Sometimes you look down and time seems to go very quickly, and other times maybe slower, but you know that the clock is progressing uniformly.
That's an incredible experience of the viewer. I think as a viewer, I have the impression, okay, there is so much going on in this scene, and then you look at the clock, it was just 3 minutes. Wow, it's an energy. You realize the experience of time through the films. But remaining on the question of time and the question of presence, as Ruth pointed out, I mean, you chose. You could have chosen many moments in the car. Of course, there is a relationship with you as commuters, but there is a specific moment that's in between the work and the life, between the day and the night. So it's like you choose a sort of interstice. I don't know in English how to say it.
Sort of dead time.
Sort of dead time, a sort of interval. So was it a sort of clear concept for you, or it was just also chance?
I mean, there's the element of chance because that's how I got to know Andrew, and it was faithful to that. But I thought it was quite interesting to explore this commute. It's quite it's very interesting, I think, to explore dead time in cinema. It's hard to do. Certainly, there's many people who have done it, but I mean, cinema is often about focusing on not dead time, where things are happening. So to film dead time can be, I think it's very difficult, but can be quite interesting to explore this space, which is usually forgotten in cinema. And a lot of filmmakers who I like explore this sort of time in between events. So I was drawn to it in that respect too. And I think it brings in themes into the film around work and how we spend our lives, which add other layers to the film, perhaps, or I was hoping about the role of work in our lives, what we do in this sort of respect. But yeah, I have to say I tend to be drawn to this sort of time in films that I like, and I was interested to try that myself. Yeah.
And then we are a very long time in the car, and then I have some. I remember my childhood, as was exactly the situation. You are just sitting there behind in the car, and you are listening to the people. They are talking, the adults. Yeah.
Yes, it's very true, and I imagine I spent my childhood in the back of cars driving around the suburbs as well. So I have thought about that in watching the film, that this is where we are. In effect, we're put in the place of a child again. It didn't occur to me at the time of making it that there would be this reading, but I think I can see that. Mm. Yeah.
But then you are also going out, and now I'm curious to know what was the decision that you, because it's quite often now it's like habitude or a mode to use the drones, but I think in your film there is really a right to do it. There's a right decision. But I'm curious about your idea about using these drones.
When we were shooting, Andrew and I had a relationship and a friendship before, but through the process of shooting, that friendship grew. And I learnt about this space, which is on the western plains of Victoria. It's sort of halfway between Melbourne, where he resided, and Adelaide, the city where both his and Cherie's mother resided. And I learned about this house that he has on there through the process of shooting. And I even took a trip out there. So this was another way that the film sort of evolved. I never knew the film would be called The Plains, or there'd be this theme at the start of the project. And I introduced the drones initially just in the film. They appear on an iPad with Andrew showing me, which was sort of reflective of what happened in real life, how I got to see it. I thought they were quite remarkably cinematic, stunning shots for Andrew to shoot. Anyway, I mentioned before that for me the film explores this time in Andrew's life and Cherie's life where their parents are passing. Now, that sort of clarified to me after we shot it, because I was editing the film and I listened to a talk that Seamus Heaney gave, the poet, talking about this time in his life and the effect this had on him and the poetry he wrote at that time. And suddenly it clicked, really, this is what this film was about, and exploring the exact same time. Now, Seamus Heaney used this metaphor of the roof of the barn being removed and the sky suddenly being exposed above. And I had this footage of Andrew's, of just him and Cherie alone on the plains with this great sky above. And it seemed to me to sync quite well with this metaphor that Seamus Heaney, and this image, it sort of tied into this theme. So I started to play with putting it directly into the film. Again, that was just an idea that came about in post-production, in the edit. It was something that grew as a process, and I sort of liked what it did to the film. And not only does it tie into those themes, but it gives a film, I think, more intimacy. Which, yes, you get this image of Cherie and Andrew on the plains, but it had this unique audio, because the audio is being recorded on the controller of the drone. And so you just get these little glimpses of quite intimate moments between the two of Andrew and Cherie out there alone, which I thought were very nice. And I convinced the both of them to permit me to use these shots, which were never intended for that purpose. Yeah.
I would like to come back to the question of sound, but before, probably remaining on this question of the planes and of these images outside the car. Because what I like very much is the sort of polarity between the car, the daily life, the routine, and this planes is sort of another place, so something. And of course, it's bound to an existential thread in your film that is played between urbanity and nature, we can say. But just at the end, you have, I think, only one time at the end where you where both elements are together. There is a moment just in the end where we see the planes from the drone, from the point of view of the drone, and we continue hearing Andrew speaking in the car. So it's a sort of, I would say, there is something happening there. So it's a sort of conciliation of these two elements. I don't know. How did you feel this?
I like that. I mean, I hadn't thought about that in exactly the same way. For me, when I was editing, I just try these things out, and it's more an instinctual what felt right at that time. And I recall at that time, I'm the type of person who sometimes will be quite rigid in thinking that a film needs to conform to what it was initially set out to do, more rigidly, and so the edit was letting that go, and that was quite a departure for me by syncing these two. And I was very, and even though I felt it was good, it took me some time to actually do it, and of course I kept it. But I think that one decision was maybe more instinctual. I was feeling the rhythm at that stage, and I liked emotionally what it brought out. Strangely, that it creates almost a climax in the film. When again, that's something I can feel now, that this is almost the climax. If there's a climax to the film, and it was sort of unintentional. I feel it's just sensing it out in the edit.
There is another climax, I think, for you, Ruth, when you saw the film together. I mean, this special song.
Yes.
Well, that's the same time.
Yeah.
It's one before the other.
So just we say too for the people who are hearing to us, Cheery by Alan Vega, actually Suicide and Alan Vega, and that this moment is sort of, yeah.
Yeah, there is so many beautiful moments, but for sure, and also I think this song in a way represent or show us also a thematics, and are the relation, the love relation between people, and how you can get in contact with the other, and so yeah, everything, and even the road between the office where he is working and his home. We not see the home where he is really going. We can just think about. And so I'm curious, did you know, or when you did decide to have this final cut in the end, how to end the film, for example?
How to end the film?
Yeah. Did you know it, or was this coming through this process?
Well, it was, as I mentioned at the start of the project, I knew the two overall sort of lines through the film. So I stayed true to that. And it was a process of writing each month, keeping in mind that endpoint. So that was naturally, I think, always going to be the end. So that decision was shaped from the outset, I think.
And probably again, but sound, because I mean, imagination is very important in your film, because there are also a lot of moments when we're just waiting for something happening, or waiting for an answer, or a question, or a call, a phone call. So, and then it's an incredibly good moment for the viewer just to imagine and to continue the story that's probably beginning in the words of Andrew or yours, and what you speak not so much in the film, but and so how was important for you to work with imagination through radio? I mean, how the radio layer works in the economy of your film, because
of the radio.
Yeah, of course.
In the film.
I've also curiosity if you create this radio, is what you did by chance.
No, that was all created. I didn't know at the start what I would have Andrew listen to. So when we filmed, it was just silent. I thought perhaps classical music, something like this. Anyway, talkback radio is what we decided on, but it's not a standard commercial talkback radio. It's in line with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. The ABC often has these talkback programs, which the audience is probably quite middle class, left-leaning, middle-aged people. So I think in Australia it would say something about who Andrew is, knowing, because we ended up getting John Fain to do the radio, who had just retired from the ABC. He's a very well-known journalist and radio presenter in Melbourne in particular, but in Australia. It was quite I thought it was an interesting thing to do in the film. So we hosted a fake radio show, and we got callers to call in, and some of Andrew's friends, and a friend of mine works for a producer. She's a producer of Talkback Radio. They have regulars that they need. If they need anyone to bring that day, they will call the regulars. So we had a nice sort of 2 hours of doing Talkback Radio. And then I think the radio, it's a very isolated place, the car, driving in the commute in Melbourne, and there's some sort of sense of the greater community, this connection is sort of drawn in through the radio, and you get a greater sense of what's going on in the world as well around. It just seems to add a nice sort of level to the film to sort of play with a little bit, to make comments on, I guess, greater society of what's going on in Andrew. It was a decision that was made because I think when you confine yourself largely to a car in the film, you have to start thinking creatively. Well, how can I get how can I create a wider, broader sense of what's going on? How do I get information into the film? How do I... And the device of talkback radio, I think, is interesting in a number of ways, but I just sort of liked the energy that it gave the film as well by hearing these other people, various characters on the phone. I mean, not only what they're talking about, but also what they bring, and sort of in the sound design where we put things, we sort of mapped it out a little bit, what felt good where.
This is your film is also, of course, is a story of friendship. Also, there are many relationships, familiar relationships, the couple Andrew and Sherry, but at the same time, it's the story of your friendship, and so it's very intimate. But at the same time, I don't know, it's just my ignorance of Australia. I think that I learned also something about Australia, but something probably deeper that is not just how the people live or that there is a lot of traffic that I didn't imagine because Australia is so big. You imagine also there is no problem with traffic, but yeah, probably about this but anyway. No? And you say very, very time. But anyways, I mean, he lives very tragic or very difficult things with a lot of emotion, but there is always this attitude, but anyway, oh, no care, that's not a problem. Sort of little depressive or I don't know, or existential attitude. And I don't know if there's something specific Australian for you or...
Well, I think it's probably a gross generalization, but there would be a quality, particularly with sort of masculinity in Australia, to not be particularly vulnerable and to brush these things off, to say this, but anyway, which Andrew says a lot. And the setting of the car, I think, is maybe the only way, well, or a unique way for men, or a man in this case, to maybe open up a little bit. I mean, I sense that there is a lot going on in Andrew's life around his mother, and there's a whole another part around his sister's suicide. I mean, it makes the film sound very depressing, but there's these many elements of the film, and there's not really a sense that he's, well, sometimes processing and dealing with that, but occasionally in this setting of the car where you're not looking directly at someone and you're just looking ahead, it creates an ability to open in this way, in a way that I think if two people were looking at each other, particularly in Australia, it would never ring true. It wouldn't. I not only would it ring true, I couldn't imagine it. Andrew and I sitting at a table and him telling me these things. It's like you needed to be in the car talking. And I think that's true a lot in my life. I mean, I've sat in the car with my father, who is maybe similarly reticent. You know, he doesn't give a whole lot of emotion, and the car is a space, I think, where maybe you can get. He does still say "but anyway" a lot, but occasionally you get a more open, vulnerable moment.
Probably just a last question about Andrew, because in the film he says that he don't like to hear his voice, and that he should not show the image of her wife. And now with this film, I mean, 1,000 people hear his voice and Sherry's there. Or, I mean, how was his reaction or her reaction also for Sherry?
Well, I don't think either of them had any idea that it would be seen when it started out. I think Andrew was just, looking to help me out, do something interesting. He was drawn to explore these themes, 9 to 5 live. So I don't want to speak, I shouldn't speak for them, but I think he's proud of what has happened. He still hasn't seen the very finished version. I saw he saw a version before we went to France to do the sound mix. So he's seen the edit, but he hasn't seen it in a cinema, and he hasn't seen it with people. I think there is a reluctance on his behalf to do that. I keep trying to convince him to do that. But Cherie, she watched it recently at the Sydney Film Festival. She came, and I think, it was a positive response that I gave, but maybe I can't say too much more about what she actually felt, because I'm not sure.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Thank you, Ruth, and thank you very much, David.
Thank you all.
And have a nice time in Basel with your movie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Willkommen, welcome, bienvenue. La radio du festival Bildrausch.